Discover how an amazing act of kindness transformed a freezing boy into a billionaire's son. The wind howled through the empty streets, wrapping around 12-year-old Jake like the unwanted embrace of his memories, painful and chilling. Clad in a threadbare jacket, he trudged through the snow, each step accompanied by the relentless gnaw of hunger. Since the accident, sorrow had become his constant companion, a heavy weight dragging him into a deep abyss of despair. As he wandered, the sharp whistle of the wind pierced his ears, a chilling reminder that he was utterly alone. Suddenly, a shattering sound broke the eerie silence, metal and glass mingling in chaos. Without thinking, he raced toward the noise, heart pounding as adrenaline surged through him. There, amidst the twisted wreckage of a car, lay an elderly man, trapped and clutching at his own pain. Walter, the elusive billionaire, known for his fortune but veiled in tragedy, was now just a struggling human, just like Jake. Despite the biting cold ripping at his skin, Jake's instincts kicked in. Summoning every ounce of strength, he pried open the mangled door, a burst of warmth escaping as it cracked free. The flames began licking at the frame, curling eagerly toward him. "Come on, sir," he shouted, his voice raw with urgency. The man's eyes widened with gratitude or fear, Jake couldn't tell. He pulled Walter from the wreckage just as a plume of smoke exploded outward, the heat briefly enveloping them both. What was supposed to be a night of survival turned into an unexpected alliance. Sitting cross-legged by a small fire, with snow swirling around them like the unpredictable nature of life, stories poured forth. Walter shared tales laced with regret and the agony of lost loved ones. In the flickering warmth of their fire, Jake could see shadows of his own grief mirrored in Walter's face, recognizing that even great wealth couldn't shield you from heartbreak. But an unsettling thought crept in. Could he really trust this man? Was his kindness genuine or a mere commodity? Before he could unravel his labyrinth of thoughts, Walter leaned closer, offering not just a warm coat, but mentorship, a lifeline in a world that had turned cold and cruel. "You remind me of my late wife," Walter said, eyes glistening. Jake felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in ages: hope. Before they could delve deeper into their bond, fear jolted Jake. A scheming rival, seeking to leech off Walter's vulnerabilities, lurked in the shadows. As Walter's previous life of luxury threatened to crumble, Jake discovered another layer to his own existence, a hidden inheritance entwined in the very foundation that Walter's wife had established. Complex emotions churned within him. He could help Walter rise from these ashes, protect him from betrayal, and claim his own identity. But at what cost? Was he merely a pawn in someone else's game? Or was he destined to become something more? He wrestled with the weight of possibility and the icy grasp of uncertainty, feelings swirling in tandem like the snowflakes falling softly around them. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Jake could feel his pulse quicken as the stakes grew higher, uncertainty coloring each decision. Could he bear the burden of family ties that felt foreign yet compelling? As the weight of the past encircled him, he faced the gnawing truth. True wealth emerged not just from fortune, but from the choices we make. Yet as shadows loomed and secrets threatened to rip apart this fragile bond, he was left teetering on the precipice of something irrevocable. Would he find the courage to stride into a future, not just for himself, but for the man who had seen a semblance of light within his darkness? Time hung suspended in the frigid air, waiting for him to make his move. Jake woke to the smell of smoke swirling through the crisp morning air. He blinked against the harsh brightness of dawn, the remnants of a restless night etched into his tired face. Walter sat nearby, fanning the dying embers of their fire, deep in thought. Behind the innocent morning facade lay a crumbling world, Walter's empire trembling under the weight of betrayal, and Jake's identity hanging precariously in the balance. "Do you feel that, Jake?" Walter's voice broke through, soft yet urgent. "Today is pivotal." Jake nodded, a swirl of determination and apprehension pooling in his gut. He wasn't merely a homeless boy anymore. A flicker of ambition stirred within him. The night had woven a thread of connection between them, an unbreakable bond forged through shared suffering. He felt the urge to step into Walter's world, to push past the shadows of doubt. "What do we do?" Walter turned to him, eyes searching. "I need to reclaim what's mine before it's too late, and I want you by my side. But this is no easy path, Jake. Shadows of betrayal lurk everywhere." As Walter recounted the impending threats, Jake's mind raced. Could he set aside his own needs for the greater good? Would he have to confront his unspoken fears? Each revelation tugged at him, forcing choices he had never needed to make before. Together, they set off toward the remnants of Walter's opulent life, now dwindled to echoes of costly cars and vacant properties. The city hummed with life around them, yet Jake felt more alive in the chaos of imminent danger than he ever had as a boy drifting in loneliness. Each step solidified within him a deepening resolve to emerge not just as a witness, but a vital component in the unflinching fight for Walter's legacy. "Remember where we started," Walter murmured, glancing sideways at Jake. "Every decision you make will define you. They will either bind you to despair or elevate you to heights you can't yet fathom." As they approached an ominous high-rise office, Jake's pulse quickened. Inside, hidden truths awaited. The scent of betrayal penetrated the air. He could almost taste it. Would his presence add fuel to the flames threatening to engulf Walter? Or would he wield it as a sword against adversity? Deep inside, he recognized the gravity of his impending choices. Yet, inexplicably, he felt lighter. A new flame ignited within him. Once inside, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Their rivals were waiting, a cadre of slick business people floating in a sea of deceit. Jake and Walter stepped forth, the palpable tension sparking electrical charges between them. "Jake," Walter whispered, "you need to slip into the boardroom unnoticed. Find the documents related to my wife's trust. It'll contain the keys to our survival." "What if they catch me?" The weight of the task anchored Jake to the spot, fear swirling in his mind. "Then you show them who you are, an heir, not a pittance. You aren't just a boy anymore, Jake. You're a player in this game." With a reluctant nod, Jake moved stealthily through the halls, a ferocity igniting within him. Each brush past a suited executive felt like an exhilarating, treacherous dance. He knew what was at stake now, not just survival, but a reclamation of identity, authority, and self-worth. He ducked into the boardroom, heart racing. A large table divided the elite, grinning faces obscuring darker intentions. On the wall hung a large portrait, a triumphant reminder of the life Walter once led. Jake felt the knot within him tighten, the urge to yield nearly overwhelming. But just as uncertainty began to root itself in the corners of his mind, he caught sight of the folder lying on the glossy mahogany surface, the very documents they needed. Gritting his teeth against the swell of anxiety, he made a choice that felt transformational. He wouldn't shy away. As his hand reached out for the folder, a voice echoed from behind him, unmistakably cold and menacing. "Well, well, if it isn't the orphan playing in grown-up games." What do you think you're doing?" Jake froze, heart pounding in sync with the mounting tension. The moment of truth stood before him, and he knew it was time to confront not just the man in the shadows, but the depths of his own courage. Would he rise to the challenge, seize this moment, or would his chance at transformation slip through his fingers? The answer hung in the air, trembling like the foundry ready to be forged. Time slowed as Jake stood motionless, unsure whether to bolt or confront the man who threatened to unravel everything he had fought for. In that moment, he was no longer the invisible boy from the streets. Walter had entrusted him with more than just a responsibility. He had let Jake glimpse the possibility of becoming someone significant. "That's none of your business," he managed, the words feeling foreign yet powerful as they ripped from his throat. It surprised even him. To assert himself in the face of condescension felt like a rite of passage. The room shifted subtly, an undercurrent of tension rippling through the polished surfaces and well-tailored suits. The man stood tall, his smirk betraying a veneer of control. "Yet here you are, a child playing detective. Do you really think they'll let you walk away with family secrets?" With each moment, fear transformed into resolve. This was not merely about retrieving documents. It was about defining his place in a world that had always seen him as less. He couldn't afford to look weak, not now, not when he felt the flicker of hope igniting against the darkness. Before he could overthink, Jake lunged for the folder, fingers brushing the edges with the fear of loss igniting his resolve. The man's hand shot out to grab him, but Jake was faster, pulling away and cradling the folder to his chest. "Stop," he breathed, feeling the heavy allure of authority wafting from those seated around the table. They regarded him with a mix of amusement and pity, fueling the inferno in his belly. It was a familiar sensation, the ignominy from his past trying to swallow him whole. Jake's instinct kicked in. "I'm here because I belong. I am part of this company just as much as any of you." His voice held steadiness he had struggled to achieve in the span of a few moments. "And if you think about betraying Walter—" The words hung in the air, teetering on the edge of confrontation. The smirk faded, shadows flitting across the man's face. "You overestimate your worth, boy. Let me know when you wake up from your dream." The retort struck him, but Jake leaped forward, feeling the protective cloak of Walter's legacy wrap around him. "You think I am nothing? I lived in darkness and know exactly what happens to those who betray. You," he pointed decisively, "underestimate strength born from survival." The boardroom fell silent. The heads that once dismissed him now turned in hesitant regard. There lay a strange thrill in their surprise, a realization that Jake might not be just an obstacle, but a contender. "Get out," the man spat, and the venom in his voice cut deep, but it wasn't followed by violence, merely disdain. "You don't belong here, not yet." Yet, with the folder clutched to his chest, Jake felt his pulse synchronize with a new rhythm of empowerment. He wasn't just holding papers, he was holding possibilities and potential outcomes. The gravity of his decisive act sent ripples through him, moving him beyond mere survival into a fierce claim of his identity. What had once been a fleeting thought grew clearer. This moment could unravel or redefine him. As he edged toward the exit, he felt eyes upon him, a mix of intrigue and disdain. Each step out of the boardroom felt lighter, marked by an unshakable self-awareness. Yet within him brewed a storm. Would he reveal Walter's trust documents and face potential fallout? What awaited him outside those imposing doors? The uncertainty churned in his gut, both terrifying and exhilarating. In the corridor, he spotted Walter waiting, eyes sharp and expectant. The moment of revealing his triumph loomed ahead, heavy with promise and consequence. Through the haze of newfound strength surged a question. Did he dare trust that this was the beginning of a greater transformation, one that could truly elevate him beyond his past?
But amid the triumph stood a stark realization. Even victories could lead into perilous new waters. What consequences awaited him for defying the threadbare norms set by those who despised him? The electricity was palpable, the next wrinkle in their fight for survival coursing through the air. Jake's heart raced. A moment pointed him toward the path of confrontation, but would he have what it took to face the darkness threatening to edge out his light? Jake stepped into the bright corridor, the folder resting in his hands like a fragile treasure. Walter stood poised, a handsome specter against the sterile backdrop, and Jake could read a mix of pride and concern etched across his mentor's face. "Did you get it?" Walter's voice was measured, yet underneath it was a tremor of anticipation. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of the folder tether him to both fear and revelation. "Yes, but there's more. I faced him, Walter. I told him I belong." The light in Walter's eyes flickered with something between approval and disbelief. "You confronted him directly? Good. But remember, this game is dangerous. You've just stoked a fire, and it could consume you." For the first time, Jake felt the truth of his words. The thrill of standing up for himself had sparked a flame inside him that refused to be extinguished. "I know what I'm doing. I've survived far worse," he said, the sting of his past echoing against the backdrop of newfound assertiveness. As they moved toward Walter's office, Jake's mind raced. The folder contained not just documents, but also the keys to his future, a chance to become the architect of his destiny rather than a mere pawn in someone else's game. Walter's faith in him had fueled an inner transformation he hadn't anticipated. "Let's review what's inside," Walter said as they settled into the corner office, its sleek lines juxtaposed against the haze of ambition swirling in the air. Jake opened the folder, methodically revealing page after page. Each document felt like a tether to the world he was clawing his way into, and as he scanned the contents, he saw plans, deals, and names that resonated with power. "These records, they're worth much more than I thought."
"Yes," Walter said slowly, "but be wary. Exposing secrets like this isn't just revealing the truth, it can also shatter alliances." Jake straightened, the adrenaline still coursing through him. He examined their precarious position. "What do we do now? Do we go on the offensive?" Walter's measured gaze pierced through him, and Jake felt as if he were being evaluated, dissected. "We need to prepare. Power moves swiftly and ruthlessly. If we act impulsively, it could backfire. We must be strategic." Taking in Walter's words, Jake recognized something profound stirring within him, a yearning to embrace both the audacity of his ambition and the wisdom of restraint. In a single moment, he confronted the dichotomy that could define his path forward. He could be the bold player, but he also needed to be the intelligent strategist. "Okay, so we plan," Jake said, his resolve solidifying. "What about our relationships with the others? We can't just tighten the grip. We must build alliances." Walter nodded, impressed. "Good. Speak with them. Anticipate their moves. Uncover their interests. You have to take ownership of your position." Jake's mind bubbled with possibilities, mapping out dialogues and potential pitches. A network of strategies layered in his brain began to interweave. This was more than self-assertion. It was the awakening of a leader. "Walter," Jake began, the excitement tinting his voice, "what if we approach this like chess? Anticipate 3 steps ahead, play to our strengths, but also expose theirs." "Exactly," Walter replied. "This isn't just about hoarding information. It's about knowing when to shield your hand and when to reveal your pieces." They were caught in the momentum of their unfolding plot, and Jake felt a surge of exhilaration. The world was no longer a passive entity. He was about to take the reins, sculpting his destiny each step of the way. But beneath this excitement lay an anxiety, a voice whispering that each move came loaded with risk. Jake instinctively grasped the folder, its contents now mingling with the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. As he prepared to leave Walter's office, a deeper truth clung to him. Every choice he made now carried the potential for both creation and destruction. Would he forge ahead with audacity or retreat into self-doubt? The moment hung in the air, charged with possibility, as he stepped into the unknown. Jake somehow knew that the true test of who he was about to become awaited him just beyond the threshold. And if every encounter along the way could be a trap or a treasure, did he dare to believe that he could emerge not only unscathed, but triumphant? The thought ignited a spark, forcing him to ponder his next move. What path would he choose, and how would he contend with the very risk threats lurking in the shadows of power? Jake strolled out of Walter's office, the folder tucked under his arm, his heart pounding with the electric pulse of determination and trepidation. The corridor felt different now, each step resonating with purpose. No longer simply a resident in this corporate labyrinth, he had declared himself a contender, poised to reshape his narrative. Yet, lurking beneath the surface, doubts throbbed like an unwelcome companion, gnawing at the edges of his confidence. His first decision loomed large: who to target first in his quest for alliances. Jake's mind flickered back to the murmurs swirling around the water cooler, the just-beneath-the-surface tensions characterizing fragile partnerships. There was Emily, whose knowledge of the supply chain had proven vital to Walter's projects. Derek, known for leveraging relationships with clients. And, of course, Amelia, whose charm masked a sharp intellect. They all presented unique opportunities and potential traps. Jake's strategy began to take shape. Could he engage Emily in a casual conversation about the upcoming project and gauge her loyalty? He could heighten the stakes by aligning his interests with hers. The thought made him smile. The chess game had begun. However, as his thoughts raced, another voice echoed in his mind. Each interaction had its consequences, and he couldn't afford to misstep. Certainty found a place in his consciousness, revealing itself through a steely determination. He had to embrace risk. Every significant advancement required some level of vulnerability. Determined to come across as confident yet approachable, Jake headed towards Emily's workstation, rehearsing his opening lines. The prospect of collaboration ignited an adrenaline rush, but as he neared her desk, a creeping sense of self-doubt emerged. What if he overplayed his hand? What if she didn't see value in his plans? "Hey, Jake!" Emily's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts, laced with warmth. She wore a loose sweater that softened her sharp features, contrasting with the serious nature of their environment. "What's up? Do you have a minute?" He leaned against the edge of her cubicle, opting for casual confidence. "I was hoping to bounce a few ideas off you regarding the supply chain integration." She raised an eyebrow of interest, and Jake felt the tension ease slightly. "Sure, I'd love to hear what you've got." As they exchanged ideas, Jake was struck by Emily's insights and the way they complemented his own. Their conversation flowed, transforming an abstract notion into an evolving dialogue, a collaborative endeavor. He could sense her enthusiasm burgeon, and for the first time a flicker of belief ignited within him. Was he truly capable of leading? Did he have what it took to navigate this complex web of alliances? Elevate others while solidifying his own position? With each laugh and nod of agreement, Jake grew bolder in his assertions, framing their collective path towards integration as a goal worth pursuing. Yet lurking beneath the surface was a tinge of fear. Did he genuinely possess the capacity to inspire loyalty, or would his ambitions paint him as a threat? By the end of their discussion, Emily's earlier reserve shattered into shared excitement, and they rounded off with a commitment to engage others soon. Jake walked away buoyant, his success yet marred by the simmering anxiety of the choices ahead. Was he becoming the leader he envisioned, or merely a product of opportunism? The day unfolded with a whirlwind of meetings and strategizing, his name bubbling like a whispered secret among his colleagues.
Yet, as the sun dipped low, casting shadows that seemed to wrap around him, Jake could feel the very real risks lurking within every calculated alliance. Each connection carried potential consequences, some potentially lethal to his aspirations. What would happen when the others began to sense his ambitions? Or when Derek confronted him about an unexpected confrontation over shared interests? Would the camaraderie forged with Emily hold firm, or would it unravel under the weight of competitive tension? Jake stepped into the twilight, questioning the road ahead, knowing the stakes were rising. The whispers of challenge were relentless, and the answers he sought were still hidden in the dark corners of desire and ambition. Did he have what it took to weather the storm brewing on the horizon? The next period would test not just his strategic prowess, but the boundaries of his convictions. Just as he was getting a handle on this game of chess, fate had one more twist in store, an unexpected encounter that would alter his trajectory forever. Jake arrived the next morning, his resolve sharpened by the uncertainty that loomed over his nascent ambitions. The air felt charged with potential. Each beep of the elevator and chatter of passing colleagues heightened his awareness of the corporate stage he was on. Climbing the stairs of his career required more than strategy. It required composure and self-awareness. His interactions with Emily had ignited a sense of shared purpose. Yet that spark was just the beginning. He knew others were watching, their motives tangled in a web of their ambitions. The reality of his workplace felt simultaneously exhilarating and oppressive. Would he stand firm in his ideals, or would the weight of competition compel him to sacrifice principles for power? Determined to keep the momentum going, Jake scheduled a follow-up discussion with Derek, anxious to solidify their respective positions in this tapestry of alliances. Derek was well connected with influential clients, and understanding his approach could either fortify Jake's plans or expose deeper vulnerabilities. As he walked toward Derek's office, Jake started to question the nature of their dynamic. Would Derek see him as a potential partner or an impending rival? This contemplation transformed into an internal whirlwind, battling his desire for mentorship against his fear of being overshadowed. Upon entering Derek's office, he noted the well-organized chaos: a bright screen filled with performance metrics, coffee cups stacked precariously in one corner, and an unyielding aura of authority. "Jake, right on time," Derek said, gesturing to a chair with an easy smile, but Jake caught a flicker of skepticism in his eyes. "Thanks for meeting with me," Jake said, forcing a grin. He leaned forward, projecting legitimacy as he laid out his vision for the integration project.
He mixed his ideas with an eagerness that momentarily masked his nerves. Derek listened intently, interrupting only occasionally with pointed questions that pierced through Jake's defenses. "Why do you think this might interest our higher-ups? What makes you any different from others pitching their agendas?" The challenge stung, but Jake embraced the discomfort. This was not about merely defending his ideas, it was a test of his authenticity. "I believe this integration isn't just about streamlining processes, it's about creating a platform that fosters collaboration and transparency," Jake replied, inner strength rising as the words left his mouth. Derek leaned back, eyes narrowed. "Ambition is key, but so is credibility. Do you truly think you can inspire that in others?" It was a fair question, and one that echoed Jake's own doubts. He had crafted a narrative for himself, but the belief of others didn't hinge solely on eloquent pitches. It required demonstrating competence over time. And yet, could he genuinely become a beacon for loyalty amidst a landscape defined by self-interest? As their conversation progressed, Jake grasped the nuances of Derek's motivations. They shared ambitions, yet thrived on different prongs of the corporate ecosystem. Rather than viewing each other as adversaries, he felt the potential for mutual growth. The prospect invigorated him. It was not just about him striving upward, but about both rising together. Just as the conversation reached a positive turn, a knock on the door disrupted the moment. Amelia walked in, exuding confidence with her radiant smile and piercing gaze. Jake sensed the sudden shift in the atmosphere. This unexpected entry could alter the trajectory of the conversation, casting shadows on the possible alliance he had begun to forge with Derek. "Hope I'm not interrupting," Amelia said. Her frankness sent threads of tension coursing through Jake's spine. He had entered this meeting willing to engage with vulnerability, but the arrival of another player threatened to stir the competitive currents he had tried to harness. As Jake navigated between Derek and Amelia, battling to balance his aspirations with the politics at play, a realization solidified within him. To rise, he needed not only allies, but a principled approach. He had to learn to wield vulnerability as a strength while navigating the cutthroat nature of corporate maneuvering. But as the stakes of his journey began to crystallize, did he have the conviction to remain true to himself when faced with the inevitable betrayals lurking just out of sight? The tension shifted, leaving Jake uncertain but more aware of the challenges ahead. He needed to strategize wisely, knowing his next move would be paramount. And as the meeting concluded, he left with a nagging thought. What lengths would he go to protect his vision from the incoming turbulence? Jake stepped into the early afternoon sun, feeling its warmth break through the lingering heaviness of the meeting. The contrasting brightness of the outside world seemed almost a rebuke to the tense atmosphere he had just exited. He had emerged from the convergence of Derek's calculated skepticism and Amelia's poised confidence with a newfound clarity about the intrinsic complexities of his environment. Now he needed a plan, a way to mold these unpredictable dynamics to his advantage. He strolled through the bustling office, absorbing the rhythm of his colleagues. Their glances, some curious, others indifferent, fueled Jake's determination. Experience had taught him that every interaction was pivotal, whether it was a fleeting smile at the coffee machine or a sharp exchange during meetings. Each moment held the potential to propel him upward or unravel his aspirations. With newfound resolve, Jake decided to shift his focus from navigating relationships solely through the lens of ambition to embracing a more nuanced perspective, fostering genuine connections. It was time to transform not just how others perceived him, but how he perceived himself within this intricate web of alliances. How could he tap into the strengths of those around him while remaining anchored in his values? Jake spent the next few days observing, not just others, but himself in the interactions he was part of. He noted the moments where vulnerability led to a stronger rapport, and where competition stifled communication. A quiet conversation with a colleague over coffee led to insights about the integration project when he let his guard down and asked for advice, transforming a potential rivalry into collaboration. He began to piece together the contours of an authentic approach. His approach also called for a more profound understanding of his resilience. To safeguard his vision, Jake realized he had to acknowledge the emotional and psychological barriers that his ambitions created. Stress, disappointment, and the looming possibility of betrayal were constant companions. He needed strategies to manage these emotions effectively. Each time he felt fractured, Jake turned to reflective practices, journaling after work, recalling his victories, and articulating his fears, which helped him unpack the tension he carried. But an unsettling truth gnawed at him. Could he truly sustain this balance when stakes escalated? He recalled Amelia's unexpected intrusion, a sharp reminder of the ruthless nature of the corporate chess game. Would her competency challenge his resolve or illuminate an unforeseen path? A week passed, and amidst strategic reflection, Jake received an unexpected email from Derek requesting a follow-up meeting. The recurrent feeling of uncertainty gripped him, intertwining hope and apprehension. Would this meeting serve as a platform to solidify their alliance or expose vulnerabilities he wasn't prepared to face? As he prepared for the meeting, a sense of depth unfurled within him. Knowledge had become his ally. Self-awareness was blossoming into a skill set he hadn't fully explored before. He needed to lead with assertiveness, advocating not just for his project, but for his emerging self-concept. When Jake arrived at Derek's office, the tension had morphed into an electric anticipation. The door opened, and he stepped in, ready to confront the cascading complexities laid before him.
But just as Jake sat down, Derek's phone buzzed ominously, and Derek's expression hardened as he took the call.
The room filled with a sudden tension that promised to cut deeper, the kind of moment that would force Jake to navigate both the unexpected and the inevitable fallout. What news awaited Derek? And more importantly, how would it affect Jake's carefully constructed web of alliances and ambitions? The meeting was about to take a turn he never anticipated. Derek held the receiver to his ear, his gaze drifting past Jake, looking out the window as though he could see the source of whatever news rattled him. Jake's heart raced as he felt the palpable shift in the atmosphere, the walls of the chic office seeming to close in. He took a steadying breath, reminding himself that uncertainty often accompanied growth. What would he find in the depths of this impending confrontation? Seconds felt like hours, while Derek's voice lowered, a mixture of urgency and disappointment lacing his tone. Jake's ears strained to catch snippets of the conversation, his mind racing through possibilities. This twist, this unknown factor, was something he hadn't planned for. The very alliances he sought to solidify might become all the more precarious if Derek was forced to act against his interests. The realization struck him. In this world, the moment you believed you had control was when you lost it most dramatically. Jake had embarked on a journey to better navigate his relationships, but the weight of unpredictability threatened to unravel his progress. He couldn't afford to let fear govern his choices. Whatever was happening in Derek's world could either challenge or empower him. As the call ended, Derek's expression shifted from tense focus to frustrated reflection. Jake felt compelled to speak, to assert himself before the conversation shifted irreversibly in the wrong direction. "Is everything all right?" he ventured, the question tinged with a confidence he was just beginning to grasp. The moment felt pivotal. Derek turned toward him, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, as if he'd forgotten Jake was even there. "We need to discuss the project," he stated, but the words carried an undercurrent of distraction. Jake caught the briefest shadow of vulnerability lurking beneath Derek's usual composed facade. "No," Jake interjected, surprising himself. "We need to discuss any external pressures first. Whatever that was, it seemed serious." The directness of his approach invigorated him. It wasn't just about the project, it was about understanding the man who held power over his ambitions. Derek regarded him for a moment, and in that silence, a delicate alliance began to weave itself together. If Jake could prove to Derek that he was not only ambitious, but also reliable in recognizing the broader playing field, perhaps he could fortify their collective position. With an inclination of his head, Derek conceded. "You're right. There's been a shift in management regarding the integration." The subsequent conversation morphed into a candid exchange. They dissected the implications of management's decisions while Jake subtly introduced insights gleaned from his recent collaborations. Each suggestion subtly reinforced the value of mutual support, transforming the dynamic from mere hierarchy into a partnership of sorts. As the discussion deepened, Jake uncovered not just knowledge, but also a layer of Derek's motivations, understanding how his insecurities shaped decisions. The room was charged with a spirit of collaboration, and Jake was keenly aware of his growing confidence. But just as Jake felt the vibrant energy of possibility swell, another message from Derek's phone buzzed ominously. The sudden interruption pierced the atmosphere, and Jake braced himself. In that instant, he realized that each decision, every moment of boldness he exhibited, could either expose strengths or reveal frailties. Would this new information shatter the fragile trust they had begun to foster, or would it compel them both to rise together against a mutual threat? The promise of challenge hung heavy in the air, leaving Jake wondering if he had the resilience to withstand yet another storm. How far would he have to stretch his developing skills to navigate the fallout of this unfolding crisis?
The next moment could redefine everything he was beginning to understand about himself and his new role. Jake's eyes flickered to Derek, who had momentarily paused, tension pulsing visibly through his shoulders. Whatever new development awaited them on that screen felt like the brewing storm Jake had been dreading since entering the corporate world. It was as if the vibrations of unease had infiltrated the very air they breathed. Derek's fingers hovered above the screen, and he took a breath that seemed to ground him for a moment. Jake seized this slight lull. He had seen too many opportunities slip through his fingers from hesitating. This time, he wouldn't wait. "What just came through?" Jake asked, his tone steadying as the words left his lips. The immediacy of his inquiry felt more commanding than a mere curiosity. It signaled his readiness to step deeper into the complexities of their situation. There was strength in confronting chaos directly. Derek met his gaze, weighing the prospect of sharing his concerns. "It's about the merger," he finally confessed, the words tinged with frustration. "Some stakeholders have reservations, serious ones. If we don't address them immediately, everything we've worked on is at risk." Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach, but with it came an exhilarating intensity. This was not just about project success anymore. It was an opportunity to display his emerging leadership. What if we set up a meeting with those stakeholders? "We should clarify their concerns and present our vision directly," he suggested. Awareness of his role in this unfolding drama sharpened by the urgency around them. Derek's eyes widened, perhaps startled by Jake's proactive stance. It was a noteworthy shift. The disparity between hierarchy was beginning to dissolve in the heat of this crisis. The power dynamic wasn't about who held the title anymore. It was about who had the will to act. "That could work," Derek acknowledged, nodding slowly. As they launched into strategy mode, Jake's mind raced. He noted the idiosyncrasies of
Derek's vulnerability, his hesitations, the way he weighed options too heavily when under duress. It became clearer to Jake that not only was he learning the professional game in this high-stakes environment, he was also beginning to understand the psychological mechanics at play. Each new piece of information turned the puzzle of Derek's management style more vivid and revealing. In the midst of their discussion, Jake's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen, his heart sinking slightly at the name, Christina. Just as he was reaching for the conflict regarding Derek's focus, he noticed the stark contrast between the looming corporate challenges and the stirrings of personal connections that had always felt secondary until now. "Excuse me," he said, a mix of anxiety and urgency bubbling to the surface. He needed to figure out if there was a way to ride the wave of successes and failures hand in hand. "I'll just take this." Stepping outside, he could feel the cool air steadying him, but the growing uncertainty gnawed silently at his resolve. Underneath, a realization began to crystallize. Making progress meant not only adapting and pushing ahead, but also worth examining what connections mattered personally. As he answered the call, Christina's voice dripped with warmth, but he could detect underlying tension. "Jake, I heard about the merger. The papers are saying it could fall apart. What's going on?" Her words bore weight. Jake realized this wasn't just a professional crisis. It was a test of how personal relationships intertwined with his ambitions. "Things are complicated," he replied, the confidence from earlier rolling away like mist in the morning sun. "But I'm working on solutions." In that moment, a flicker of doubt surfaced. Balancing ambitions and boundaries felt like navigating a tightrope in the wind. How much could he stretch his skills without losing the very essence of who he was? With Christina's concern echoing in his ears, Jake stepped back inside. The office ambiance buzzed with renewed energy, but now it also danced with personal responsibility. The quest for success intertwined more profoundly with the people in his life than he'd previously understood. As he faced Derek anew, and they delved deeper into preparations for the evening's crucial stakeholder meeting, Jake felt the pressure mount. He would need more than just strategies. He would need to manage expectations on multiple fronts. The question echoed in his mind. Would he prioritize his ambition or his connections when the moment of truth finally arrived? And how would their fates intertwine in the wake of these decisions?
The atmosphere felt heavy, with both responsibility and potential as they entered the meeting room. What awaited them would test not only their plans, but also Jake's very understanding of himself. Walked into the boardroom, the atmosphere buzzed with tension, a palpable blend of anxiety and anticipation. Jake felt the weight of the moment, an invisible force shaping history with every breath. He was no longer simply a boy who had endured hardship. He was now
a contender armed with knowledge, strategy, and purpose. Walter stood at his side, his presence a steady anchor in this volatile sea of corporate maneuvering. Together, they faced the group of stakeholders, people who held the power to wordlessly dictate their future. Jake remembered the fears that had once consumed him, the sense of inadequacy that haunted him. "Today, we are not just discussing a merger," Jake began, his voice steady as he addressed the room. "Today, we are defining our directions together." The feeling of empowerment coursed through him as he took his place in this corporate game. As he presented their vision, he felt the fear of rejection dissipate. With each slide, he laid bare not just data, but also the shared story of resilience that he and Walter embodied. They had both clawed through despair towards something greater, proving that wealth was not merely a matter of dollars, but a matter of choices. For the first time, Jake saw the stakeholders, once veiled in imposing authority, as individuals. He recognized their faces, their struggles reflected in his own past pain. His narrative shifted from a pitch to a partnership, sparking the realization that he had transformed from an outsider to a linchpin in this conversation. Walter shared the emotional stakes behind the merger. His own journey echoed profoundly in Jake's words, a dance of sincerity, vulnerability, and hope binding them closer together. As they spoke, Jake's heart raced. He was no longer the timid boy lost in the echo of his own doubts. He was asserting himself, carving a place within this world where he once felt invisible. The stakeholders leaned in, intrigued. The dialogue that unfolded wasn't just professional. It became personal, blending ambition with authenticity. The room shifted, murmurs evolving from suspicion to resonant acknowledgement. Finally, the lead stakeholder, a woman with silver hair and keen eyes, leaned forward, breaking the silence. "I appreciate the depth of your stories, but we need results, not just promises." Jake felt a tidal wave of realization wash over him. This was more than just presenting facts. It was about proving his capability. "I understand, and we are prepared to ensure our objectives yield concrete outcomes. Let's discuss the metrics and strategies we've developed to prove our viability." The air was electric with a newfound energy, and Jake struck the balance he had long sought. Where once he would have faltered, he now embraced challenges. As they debated, ideas volleyed back and forth. Moments of genuine connection punctuated strategic discussions. This was not just a meeting, it was a forging of alliances, with every perspective enhancing the plan they built. After a lengthy dialogue, the atmosphere lightened. The potential for collaboration blossomed. As the meeting drew to a close, the lead stakeholder looked at Jake and Walter, eyes alight with possibility. "I believe with this leadership, we can move forward. Let's draft the terms." As the weight of her words enveloped him, Jake felt an overwhelming rush of triumph. They had not merely salvaged a merger, they had nurtured a vision into reality, solidified through his transformation. Each struggle had armed him with resilience, and every connection had further defined his path. Outside the boardroom, Jake turned to Walter, adrenaline coursing through him. All the sleepless nights, every moment of despair had led to this, a transformation marked not just by what he had achieved, but who he had become. "I didn't just survive, I truly participated," Jake said, his voice full of conviction. Walter's approving nod spoke volumes, validating the journey they had navigated together. At that moment, Jake understood the essence of real wealth, authority born from empathy, a commanding spirit seated in genuine connections. He was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, armed with the knowledge that every risk he took would shape the man he aimed to be. Jake stepped out into the sunlight, feeling the warmth seep through his bones. The horizon opened before him, a field sprawling with potential adventures, challenges, and opportunities. He grasped the folder tightly, a testament to his achievements and the embodiment of newfound purpose. And as he moved forward, a single thought crystallized within him. He was no longer just a participant in others' lives. He was an architect of his journey, poised to conquer whatever awaited him on this uncharted path. This was his time. This was the moment he'd been waiting for, and he wouldn't let it pass him by. Now, dear audience, it's your turn to embark on your journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. This is the moment. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful story of overcoming and triumph.